The following is a presentation from the Greece Historical Society. The second Tuesdays of the month programs from the Greece Historical Society are sponsored by members of the Greece Historical Society and by the sponsors of advertisements in the newsletter. Space for today's program is sponsored by the Greece Central School District's Transportation and Support Services Facility. Today's program is Greece Pioneer Book Number 2 Project Update. Challenges faced while chronicling pioneer families and tracing their descendants. Recorded Tuesday, November 14th, 2023.
Good evening. I wake you up? Good evening and welcome. Welcome to Greece Central School District's Transportation and Student Support Center. We've used this room as well as when the wall is retracted, it's double the size of this room for several of our Greece Historical Society presentations over the last probably year and a half, right? And we're glad to partner with the Greece Historical Society. My name is Dave Richardson. I'm an executive director for student operations. I oversee transportation and athletics for Greece Central. So quite the marriage and partnership there. But excited to be a member of the Greece Historical Society, excited to see the great work of so many members within the Historical Society and the excellent work by Bill Sowers, president of the Greece Historical Society, and all that we can contribute and give back to the community. So without further ado, before I introduce Bill, the restrooms are behind you. In the event that the fire alarm goes off, you're going to evacuate out either of these two doors and go out to your left to the parking lot. Okay? So without further ado, Bill Sowers.
Well, welcome everybody. We didn't know. Looks like we got just this perfect size room tonight. So, a quickie announcement. Rick Antelli is in the back, and he acquired dozens of gloves. So on the way out, if you want some gloves, see Rick, and if you don't want them, take them and give them to somebody that really needs them. So tonight we have Marie Poinan and Joanne Schneider. I want to mention a few months ago we went down to Ithaca, and the state historians awarded Marie the Excellence in Promoting Local History. That's the New York State Award. And she really deserves it with all her work with not only us, Shellac community, the lighthouse, and just
Ontario Beach.
Ontario Beach. So I'm not going to tell you all about them, but let them introduce themselves and with our program and talk about our pioneer families and the next book that will be coming out soon.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for coming. Hi Deb, I was waving at you before. How many people are familiar with our first book or actually have it? Oh, that's pretty good. We're going to talk a little bit about book 2 and the challenges that we faced doing this book. The first book we're going to show you we got done in 8 months. We didn't even know each other. We met over the phone, over the computer. It was during the pandemic. So now pretty much we still do the same thing, but every once in a while we get to see each other in person. So we're going to play tag team through this program, so bear with us. The first book was one of the two major things that we did for this bicentennial for the town of Greece. The other one was the bicentennial snapshots that Patrick, who's here tonight, and Maureen Whalen did. They did one every week for the entire year of the bicentennial. So there was a part of the project that we wanted to do was give back to the community by doing a book on people that have never been written about before. So, as I mentioned before, we started during the pandemic, and we hadn't met each other until 3 months into the project. We did everything over the computer or over the telephone. In fact, Bill says, there's this woman who really like to do some stuff. She's good at genealogy, and she wants to help. I said, good. I do genealogy. I'll happy to do it. So luckily we got along really well. So we're silly enough to do this for a second time.
And I learned from a good person, because I'm a retired nurse.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's a professional, and she's getting into this because genealogy is her passion. So I've been doing this since 1997. So it was good to have somebody else as crazy enthusiastic as I was. Oh. What? Okay, I think I missed something. No?
No.
Okay, that's good. This is the cover of book 2, and this was kindly donated by the ladies, raise your hands, who are sitting in the far corner. This is the Yates Stair Mansion. This is the big yellow house that everybody recognizes at the corner of Greenleaf and Ladder Road. So they donated this picture to the Greece Historical Society. So when we started to do both of these volumes, we had certain criteria that we wanted to meet. We didn't take anybody who was in the town of Greece after 1872. So the first 50 years, if you settled in the town of Greece, you were considered a pioneer. So that was that criteria. Then we also wanted to make sure that people filled in a brief questionnaire so that we know who they were and who their pioneer relative was. They also had to fill in a 6th generation chart, which most of our people had never done before, so that we had to help them through that and say, well, we're starting with you, and then you're going to do your mother or your father, what side is the pioneer on? So we take them back, and we have to use that as a base to start with the facts of birth and death. So we also wanted to have them submit their stories for us, because we're not the family. There are certain things, everybody has a family that hands down certain anecdotes or stories about their aunt or the crazy Uncle Stan or whatever, but it's in the family. Nothing's ever been written about that. So those are the kind of stories that we wanted to hear from our people. And then they also had to fill out a photo release. And as you will find out, that's been one of our challenges this time around, getting people to actually adhere to deadlines and do the release forms. So when we started this project, we saw benefits to the community and to the Greece Historical Society. The benefits to the Historical Society is collecting all the information that we would preserve for this generation and future generations. We also wanted to get the stories and the photos that nobody has ever seen before. I mean, there are tons of things written about people like Asa Rowe. So, I mean, we didn't want the ordinary people. We wanted the people that had never been written about before, or get stories from people that have never contributed before to the Greece Historical Society. A lot of people weren't even familiar with the Greece Historical Society, but they knew that their relative had settled in the town of Greece. Also, the community education was going out and getting people so that we held a couple of genealogy sessions for the first volume. So we helped people learn how to do their own genealogy, and they would come in a couple of Sundays. I think we did that. And then we did one out in the back. It was summertime. That was really nice to do. But we had 3 people, Joanne and myself and my friend Holly from Holly Canham from Orleans County. She was in the Genealogical Society out there. So the 3 of us would come and do the Sunday afternoon. Also, we thought that what a great project this would be for the bicentennial. So, you know, originally it was like, oh no, we can't do that, that's too overwhelming. Then the more we got into it, the more excited we got. So I think that's why we started getting crazy about it. And we said, oh, even though this is too much work, we're going to pursue it anyways. So the last thing was that it was going to be a fundraiser for the Greece Historical Society. All the proceeds from the books go to Greece Historical Society. Joanne and I don't get a cut. We don't make any money doing this. We're all volunteers. In fact, we incurred a lot of expense buying the incidental things that we had to go on. Joanne can talk more about that when she gets into a couple of her people. So, you know, we would pay for the miscellaneous expenses, and we wanted this to be a fundraiser for the society. And I was just going to say, what's the total bill? Do you know? Like about 600? More than that?
No, I'm trying to
I'm sorry, I didn't
Tell me
put you on the
the
spot.
accounting thing here.
Yeah,
It wasn't that much.
okay. Well, it was 400 through Amazon, over 400, but I don't know how many we sold in the gift shop. So between the two.
And
Yeah.
the other 130, I think.
Okay,
That's how many, we sold over 500 books.
okay. The benefits to the people that gave us the information, or in the descendants, we wanted to acknowledge them as contributors. And we wanted to preserve their family story and then also talk about it. And they could see their name in print as, courtesy of for giving us the photograph. Or at the very end of each volume, we're going to have the list of contributors. Anybody who gave us any information whatsoever is going to be in the list of contributors. Also, we wanted to have people identify themselves so that they could meet other people in their family tree. Just, was it last Thursday or 2 weeks ago? I did a program at the Shalat Library. I had been talking with the phone. One of the contributors for the family is the Andrews family, which Cap Andrews ran the Windsor Ferry for 26 years from Greece to Irondequoit. Well, the person I was talking to was sitting in the back of the room. He had given me the photographs. I'm putting the photographs on the screen, and then he introduces himself afterwards. And in the front row, she goes, "Oh, you're a relative?" The two of them met each other. They had never met each other before. Same thing with volume 2 is going to have the McShay family. That was one of the great things that we ever did at Greece Historical Society. A guy came through, I think he lived in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Is that where he was from? And anyways, he was coming up here to visit Mother Sarah Cemetery to see where his great-grandparents, were buried. And so I said, well, and Bill calls me up and I said, well, maybe I can get Tom McShay, who lives here, to come and meet him. So the two of them met and exchanged information in genealogy. They've never met before, and he knows nothing about Rochester because he was born in Iowa, and then the people moved to Minnesota. So he's never been to Western New York. He was a truck driver, and he was delivering a load. So he says, "Oh, I get to go see my great-grandparents." So that's how that was done. So it's a very interesting thing that we've learned a lot, and I don't know how to put it. All these people are connected.
Yes,
Yeah,
they are.
do you want to
Yeah.
say?
Pretty much the benefit to the families are that they are preserved in a publication, so if their family's immortalized. They got to meet different members of the family, as they said, either through the internet, because we share the information that we have, because we discovered new photos, documents, and stories, which we then shared with the other family members. Not all of it was used in the stories, because these are short stories. So when the project is done, of the people that agreed to let the pictures be not only used in the book, but to be shared, they then all gain additional pictures down other family lines they didn't have, as well as stories. And then the benefit to the family is they got the services of Marie and I, Maureen, Bill, and our resources of researching. And in almost every family, we found something more. I would say I guarantee we found something more, and oftentimes a lot more depth. We're a little bit crazy, so we dug deep. And then we also were able to publicly recognize people as a pioneer family, and that we gave them certificates from the first book. And I think there was, 198 pioneer certificates were generated off of the first book to contributor families. We had a little grab bag where they won prizes with the raffle, and then Marie also, through the bicentennial year, did posters on some of our Book One families that we honored each month throughout the bicentennial year, put them up in the dining room of the Historical Society with a summary of our families there. And we invited, it didn't turn out this way, but we ended up letting the families know when their family was being profiled, and they came in and we did pictures. So we did pictures in front of the posters of their ancestors from 150 to 200 years ago. So it ended up coming full circle. So it was kind of a fun little project. I know Carolyn's family came in, and we got some nice pictures of them, and so that worked out well.
And if we knew you were coming, we would have put your picture up.
Yeah, we would have. The challenges with this book, people weren't as well versed in their families. The first book, I think, was low-hanging fruit. It was very motivated people who came out of the woodwork and were proud of their heritage. And we did have that for this book, but not as many people. They just knew their family was there early. And sometimes that's all they knew, and we were the ones that traced them back. And then a lot of these people did not have stories, because the part of the questionnaire was, do you have stories? No. Do you have photos? No. So we had to get creative. And then we have what we call wishful genealogy. We think our family is related to Ben Franklin or whatever, and it's not proven. You know, it's nice to have a family story that's a story about Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, but kind of the factual, historical things can't quite do in a publication. And then the other thing was finding property locations, because a lot of ours were here really early this time, 1808, 1830s, there's no addresses, and you'll find that that's part of our program tonight. And then in order to make this happen, we had to go find other family and descendants, because a lot of these people did not know anything. So Marie and I went searching through Ancestry, Find a Grave, the internet, and you'll hear some stories from me tonight about lurking on people's porches and getting information, doing my creep routine. You have to get permission when you do a publication. Photo permissions, copyright is really complex. If you're really interested in it and doing it, if you put in copyright in Cornell University, that explains it the best. But you cannot use photographs or images at will. So we spent a lot of our time, I would say almost about a quarter of it, finding photos or getting permissions. Some of them involved, if I would get institutional photos, lawyers, like Wegmans. The consumer person sent me to the archivist. The archivist found it, but then when I wanted permission, they sent it to the lawyers. Then they sent it to me, I had to sign it, they sent it back, and then I got the final copy. That just doesn't happen in 5 minutes. So things like that. But you need to check ownership, obtain written permission, just so that you don't get in trouble. Personal photographs are owned by the photographer and their heirs by law. So if you see something, even though it's before, kind of the 1928 rule is things published before 1928 may not be copyrighted. But there's a lot of caveats, and that is one, that photographs are owned by the family or their heirs. The copyright may be expired, but most newspapers, some magazines continue their copyright on. If you have a painting of something that's from like 1600s, and it's hanging in the Mayflower Museum, I had that happen.
Mine was in Rhode Island Historical Society.
And but they own the painting and the image, therefore you cannot use it in a publication. You have to get their permissions, even though it was painted in the 1600s. So you have to be really, really careful. The one good thing is, because we pay taxes, many of the government things, like at the Library of Congress, you can freely use, and it'll tell you that. So you need to read the fine print. When in doubt, ask. And I probably had all but 3 people accept helping me and let me use their photos. And I asked many, many people. So
about your $150?
Yeah, that's in there. I wanted, it's coming up later, but one of our immigrants came over on the Speedwell, which was the sister ship to the Mayflower. And I wanted something from the Mayflower Museum. And they gave me permission, but then the next note was $150, please. So I went looking, and they can because of the Mayflower Museum. So I went looking for other pictures, and there's a little story about that afterwards. That was free, but you never know. So we're going to meet some families, and Marie's going to take it over.
I'm just going to do a couple of examples from the families that I'm doing. The Hickox family. Obviously, the challenge here was the fact that the guy died in 1824, so obviously I'm not looking for any pictures. The next part was to find a living family member. His widow moved to Michigan, and all the kids followed. In fact, the one son had gone out there first, and then she followed him after Erastus died, and then the rest of the family was out there. So when it came to finding photos, I had to sit there and figure out where they lived in Michigan. Once I found that out by looking through the census records, then I could contact the Historical Society out there And in fact, I'll show you the picture. The guy went out and took a picture of the family farm that I was looking for, and I explained everything about Rochester, New York, and how we were part of the town of Greece, and yada yada. It's different when you're talking to strangers and you're trying to explain what you needed and why you need it, because they just don't get it, but they're tickled to death to know that they're going to be acknowledged in the book as providing you with the photograph. So the other thing was the fact that there was only one remaining descendant here locally, and that was Tom Berger, who owns a funeral home. So the interesting part was that I was already planning on doing the Hinchers, so I was doing the Hincher family and the Berger family. So then I found out that he was related to the Hickocks. Now I'm in business. Now both Joanne and I both do genealogy. So we both keep track of the people as we do it. I have a program in Roots Magic, so I'm just showing you Hickocks as a, so I don't fill in everything. All I care about is where the Hickok names come from. So I start by putting in everything with the information, and then there's about 3 more screens that come after that. But this is the basic screen that I work with, and Joanna works on Ancestry. Then we also do the descendant part. So we go and we try to figure out, let me go back and, we want to trace the pioneer family back to its immigrant, so we want to find out who was the first one and who set foot in the New World. So in this case, we got Samuel Hickox and Hannah Upson. They were the first ones that were born in this country. So then I go back and then I contact the people in England where they were from and start verifying the origin of the family itself. So, and this one is, you fill in the information of when they were born, when they lived, when they died. A lot of the people, they have the same names, generation after generation. So when you start talking about Asa, well, which Asa? Asa 1, Asa 2, Asa 7, you don't know. So this helps us both keep our wits about us when we're doing research on families that we don't even know. So I wanted to trace the people here, and I wanted to find out where they were from in England. But in the meantime, the picture on the left-hand side was the Celine of the Washtenaw County, Michigan Historical Society. He went out, and that's as close as you can get. The farm is behind those trees because they owned all of this property. And it's still to this day, it's still an existing farm. Unfortunately, I don't know the name of the cows, but it's the only picture I could get, so I had to be happy with what I got. So the interesting part was that the first one that went out there was George Hickox, and this is his death certificate, which I got from them. And then the most interesting part of the whole thing was the fact that I followed the minister. There was a minister in the family, and those of you who've ever done genealogy and stuff, you get somebody like that, like a prominent person, a rich person, a minister, a school teacher. There's probably something written about him. So when he died, there was a ton of information that I got from the Historical Society about his death that filled in the back story, talking about the mother, Lorena, moving here after her husband died. So then the rest of the family followed. So on the right-hand side, I started investigating Lorena. And I'm going, oh, okay, well, yeah. She's not the person I'm interested in, but let me just do a little bit about her. Well, I got her all the way back to the Mayflower. So that was the interesting part about that. And not only was she part of the Mayflower, there's the immigrant's name on that huge statue in Massachusetts, and there's the name, Edward Fuller, so that's who she's descended from. And talking with Tom Berger, he's the one, we did a whole restoration project with the Charlotte Cemetery in 2012 and 2013. I happened to be the one who did that project, so I had a whole list of tombstones that we wanted to take care of and make sure that they were uprighted. Well, Rastus was the last one that they did because he was a veteran, and on the left, that's the picture that I took in 2005, 2004, and it showed that it was just buried completely in the ground. So the Seabees were the ones who came and did all the uprighting of the stones. They took one out of the side of the trunk of the tree, and a lot of the ones that were buried in the ground. And so then they would build the new base. So that's Tom Berger standing beside his great-great-great-grandfather's tombstone after it was uprighted and fixed. Then to finish off, we did about 10,000 hours volunteering in that cemetery over the course of the 2 years. As a result, we've got that nautical tombstone, which is still there to this day, and that cost about $18,000. So the city of Rochester donated that to us in lieu of all the work that we did in kind for the volunteer hours that we had. So you notice Fred Amato and Jack Kemp, they're currently the president and vice president of the Charlotte Genesee Lighthouse, and they were there speaking at the dedication ceremony. And then up on top, Lee Strauss's son-in-law, Dan Pearl, is the one who did the commemorative stone, which was placed in front of the nautical flagpole. On the right-hand side is Tom with the Hitcher Monument in Parma Union Cemetery. That was the only family member to stay in the Rochester area, was Lucy. And Lucy wound up marrying William Hitcher Jr. So that's William Hitcher III. So that's why I wound up finding pictures from Tom, and also their granddaughter Alice married Tom's great-grandfather William Berger. So all three families are hooked up together. My second family that I attempted to find out anything about was George Quinn. The reason I had an interest in George Quinn is my husband's great-grandfather bought his farm on English Road from George Quinn, and Nathan English was next door, and Joanne's doing Nathan English in this volume too. So first thing I do is I go to the 1869 directory, which we have at the Historical Society, and lo and behold, they're listed practically next to each other, and on the two columns there in the directory. So the challenge that I had was that nothing had ever been written about George Quinn, and I wound up finding a descendant who lives outside of Syracuse, and she's the one who clued me in on all of the information about the family. Then I was also interested in Daniel Quinn from last book, because Daniel Quinn lived right on the old Erie Canal. And then I started investigating about him, and he built a number of different, like Fleming did the Froten Dam, while Daniel did the Welland Canal. And he also did other projects throughout New York State and in Canada. Then the two of them wind up marrying into each other's family, because Daniel's sister winds up marrying George Quinn. I've never seen a picture of George Quinn. I've seen one picture of Daniel Sharp, and that was in his obituary. Well, lo and behold, the other one who's buried in Mother Sorrow Cemetery is James. They don't know a thing about James, and I'm going, well, maybe it's his brother. Well, maybe it's just somebody, a cousin. Anything could be possible. You need proof. You just can't go and assume that you're going to find out the answer. You have to go find the proof. Well, my proof came from the descendant. There was no way I ever found proof linking the two of them together. So there's the interesting part in what happens when you find a descendant. Over on the left-hand side is the picture that appeared in his obituary. This is a secondary story that was done about Rochester history. They used to, remember when they used to do, this happened 10 years ago, this happened 25 years ago. Well, this is that kind of article that was in the newspaper. So she had the original photograph, because obviously it went down in the family, and they're the ones who gave it to the Democrat and Chronicle to write the story. And then I said, well, do you have anything about George? We don't have anything about George. Boom, there's George. So they were both prominent, very wealthy. They both left Ireland, worked in England before coming here, and they were wealthy when they got here. So you're going to find out about that in the upcoming book. But the interesting part to me was I'm a big cemetery buff. So on the right-hand side, Bill Sowers went out and took the 2 pictures of those tombstones in Mother Sowers Cemetery. The family that left went to Syracuse, came here in 1923 and back in 1925. These are the pictures from their family album. And you'll notice up at the top, Rose Sharp has a tombstone, a cross on top of her tombstone, which doesn't exist today. Also, if you look in the back on both pictures, the old pictures there, I've got the arrow on the bottom picture there. That's the old sheds that were across from Mother Sarah's where they used to park their carriages and then their cars. So how many pictures exist of that? It's not very good, but at least you've got the proof there that there were sheds there. And then the interesting part was on the right-hand side, there's a cross missing, at least that it's still up there. They don't do permanent maintenance at Mother Sarah's, so nobody's ever gone back. And in fact, I even told her, I said, the cross is off. Maybe somebody in your family wants to come here and pay to have it put back. So the interesting part about George Quinn, as I mentioned before, was here's the 1852 map, and George Quinn was the house that Captain John Burns wound up buying. And then his grandson is Archie, who is shown in the family photograph. And then I went and got the photograph of him. He became a registered detective. And then a stone photograph, which is at Rochester Museum and Science Center. I'm still waiting for permission to use that. It's been like 2 weeks now, so I don't have permission to use it. There's Archie again. Stone went out and took the picture of the 2 of them because they were twins. And they often would sit there and, play, oh, I'm Archie, oh no, I'm James. So the 2 of them did that, but I thought this was a great sequence of events to find out all of the descendants. So now I'm going to hand it over to Joanne.
Okay, I'm going to go over some of my challenges. One of the families I'm doing is the Davis and Thomas Mitchell family. The Henry Mitchell family was done in book 1. They were the Mitchell Road Long Pond one. But he married a Davis woman, and Thomas Mitchell, his brother, married another Davis woman, and her parents came. And so I'm combining them because they also branch out into some other families locally. But I didn't know I had a problem that I didn't have pictures yet because I was just starting to research them. And Dick Halsey went to an estate sale, and he's back there.
Raise your hand, Dick.
Yeah. And this is partial public service as well as others. And Dick found pictures of the Mitchell family at an estate sale. And then he researched it, put them up on Family Search so anybody can see them. But then he contacted Bill Sowers at our Historical Society. And Bill said, you know the Mitchells, right? I said, I sure do. And that's down the branch I'm going to be doing in this book. And I'm working with probably about 7 or 8 contributor family members down other branches. None of them had these pictures. These pictures would have been lost forever. So public service announcement, thank you, Dick. And the families are very grateful. But also, if you find pictures and they're labeled, if you can do a little research and find out what town they're in and drop them minimally at the Historical Society, we'll go find their family for you. And if it's at a house with pictures of the house in it, give it to the Historical Society in the town and we'll trace it down. Or somebody will, most likely. But this family is incredibly grateful for this. So thank you, Dick. So I like to do families that have never been written about before. And there's not a whole lot written about the Budd family. They owned from Long Pond Road, along the ridge on the south side, from Long Pond Road over to Latona, the entire thing. And when I research, I look at censuses, newspapers. There's 5 different newspaper sites that I go to. I get probate. I go down to circuit court and pick up probate. There's just some routine things that I do. I look at the Monroe County Gen webpage, the Rochester Church Indexing Project. So there's some things that I do for every single family. I'm very methodical. And then through researching them, I began to believe that the Falls Hotel and Tavern was probably originally belonging to the Budds, and that the Falls Cemetery was probably their property. But I can't write that. That's conjecture. I have to find proof. So they arrived in 1808. They first bought their first piece of land. Daniel Budd bought lots of land, lots of real estate transactions, so that made it complicated, where indeed he did own all that land. They arrived in 1810 from Dutchess County by way of Canandaigua, and this is 40 years later after their arrival. This is the 1852 map. So, and I did find proof that the Colbys, who own a lot down by the cemetery, did buy the property from Daniel. You'll see on the left, Falls Tavern. And on the right, by Sealy, that is where the cemetery is. They have Fentzner Road running into Latona. So if you go to the next one. So I needed to find proof about the Budd Hotel. So Greece, when they came in 1810, was known as Northampton. And I found records, the town records of Northampton that said that there was a town meeting of Northampton at Daniel Budd's. And a lot of times those things are held at taverns or homes, but it didn't specify. So then I went to the indexes, there's card indexes of old newspapers up at Rundell and available through the Monroe County Library. And I found this article in 1824 that there's 231 acres for sale near Budd's Tavern on Ridge Road in lot number 6. And that is lot number 6 on the maps. The next thing that I found is his son John Budd's obituary that said he was born in his father's hotel on the Ridge. And so, looks pretty good. Then I went to, not quite yet, then I went to real estate records, and I found out that Father Daniel sold the tavern property, because I actually found the words in it, to his son John Budd, who married Esther Fall. They sold it to John's sister Chloe. Chloe sold it to Esther Fall's brother William Fall. So that's how it came down. So I was able to do my proof. So that was kind of cool. So that one I found it, but it does, it's a lot of time. And I'm going blind looking at newspapers and things. The next thing was the Falls Cemetery. The cemetery says it was established in 1813 on the sign there. The Budd family, as I said, arrived in Greece in 1810. The first, on the Monroe County Gen web page that Dick has, there is an Excel spreadsheet of the cemetery burials. First burial was in 1811, and the first 10 years, I put the names on the bottom: Loper, Clark, Parrish, Williams, Rowe, Lay, Filer, Loudon. Those are the burials in the first 10 years, kind of a who's who's of pioneers. I went looking. Daniel, as I said, was very prolific in buying and selling land. And looking for, I was trying to prove that the cemetery belonged to him. And the Falls Cemetery name wasn't used until 1887 in newspapers. But Ridge Road Cemetery Association came up a bit. And it was on Cemetery Road, which Latona Road came to be. So I very tediously, because I'm obsessive compulsive, went through all of those grantor indexes for Daniel, and I found that John Williams, the first supervisor of the town of Greece, as well as in 1830, did another one, Frederick Rowe and Asa Hepel Tucker, were forming a committee to get a burial ground. So this does prove that Daniel Budd, it was on this lot 6, and it was originally their cemetery that then got put into, you go next one, to the Ridge Road Cemetery Association. The interesting thing is, you can turn it, it's still known as the Ridge Road Cemetery Association. That's the official name of the cemetery. It says Falls Cemetery, but that still is. Katie Meeson is the president of that now. And so there's Daniel Budd's stone buried. He's buried on his land, and a picture of the cemetery. So again, that's kind of some of the hoops we go through when you say, why does it take all that time? But it's quite a bit. So the next one, the Buckman family, I had a lot of fun with. There's a woman named Bonnie Pfizer. I have photo envy. It's a very bad disease. And I find photos online, and I want to borrow them.
Hunt them down.
I want to hunt them down. So I found Bonnie because she just had a couple up. And when I contacted her, we all know Homer. She descends from Homer's sister May. When May got married, she moved to Michigan and took all her family pictures with her. And her granddaughter is Bonnie, and she has them all. She's never been to Rochester. She had pictures of 3 properties, but she had no idea where they were from. So she also gave me several dozen of the family, some of which I'm going to share tonight, and there's more in the book. But so I wanted to identify who these houses belong to in the family. Go down one more first, and then we'll come back. So there's Homer on the right. She had a picture of young Homer. His father was George, and then Job, the grandfather, was here, and nobody knows that the other family members were here. So go back to that map. So Job Buckman, he came in the 1850s. Where am I? There's my Buckman family. From England. And he worked on the Galantine farm on Ladder Road at first. And then he set up on Ridge Road. And this is Ridge Road, kind of between North Avenue and Long Pond Road. And where his house is, which is the little square, is where Joanne Fabrics is currently. So that's where he's at. He had 50 acres. Further down on the right, and that's going to be the third property we're going to talk about, is Sarah Walker. Long Pond Road used to be known as Walker Road, Erastus Walker. But Homer was on Sarah's property later. And if you notice on the map, that's Long Pond Road there where the Walker residence is. That little box is a little bit in from the road, and when we go down to do Homer, that'll play into things too. Okay, so Job emigrated in 1857, and as said, he married a Harriet Finesse. He had 3 wives over time, 1 in England, 2 here, and finally the 4th one survived him. And you'll have to read the book for it. He had rented property on Ridge Road, and he did finally buy it in 1870 from the Benedict family across the street. And then go to the next one. So this is a picture that was sent, and I'm wondering, is this Job's farm? And I couldn't prove that it was his farm. I couldn't find a senior citizen who lived in the area that recognized the farm. I sent it out to all the historians in the area, and it was all a no-go. And when I researched, last year I did all the families, a first round of research, and then this year I wrote the stories and did a deeper round of, and this was the only one of the properties I hadn't identified. So you can go on to the next one. So I went crazy, went to real estate records. I know that when Job died, the sons got the property, and I found this real estate record of George Buckman selling to Leonard Casper. This is when I get creepy. I then pulled Leonard's obit and found out that the house was at 3042 Ridge Road. And so that lined up with Joanne Fabrics. So then I went through the list to look for someone that might be approachable when I called and contacted them or emailed them. So I found Len Casper, and he wrote a book about the Speedway, and it was on Facebook, and I sent him a Facebook message and said, "Did your family own?" And he said, "Yes." And guess what? I got pictures. He had a picture of the house and the barn, and then his father plowing in front of the barn. So it was a partial solution. I now have a picture of Job's house and barn, but it's not that one in the first picture. So if anybody knows what that barn is in the first picture and house, I have a bag of Smarties and a gift card to give you, because I still want to know what that property is.
It almost looks to me like where Sealy's farm stand used to be.
Okay.
On Ridge Road. I mean, you could ask Steve Sealy.
Okay.
He lives in the town of Greece.
All right.
He might be able to identify the building.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what it looked. Not this one, but the original one.
The original one. Okay.
That's what it looked
Yeah.
like to me.
Okay. Thank you. You'll get a gift card at that point. So the interesting thing was Leonard had another good story about it, 2 stories. One is that in the 1920s, the Buckman's boys used to have barn dances for the community there. And his parents liked to go to that and had very fond memories. And as Leonard Sr. said that he would buy it for his wife someday. In 1940, he bought it. The other thing I noticed when I was doing Job's agricultural census was in 1900, he had 346 cattle and 1,900 sheep. No one had that here. He was a butcher, come to find out. So that's what he had processed. When I mentioned it to Len, he said, of course, there was a hook in the barn where they hung the animals when they made them into food. And he said the barn had dried blood so much in it, it was packed hard as all get out. So you get some interesting things when you chase things down. He also was able to tell me where the Benedict house was. It was where Key Bank is. So kind of fun of things that you find if you are a little obsessive. The property was sold to Wegmans in 1961 because they wanted to prevent a competing grocery to go in, and the Mangurians went in. Yes?
Is it possible that left-hand picture was where the old Grange Hall was?
No. It's a different building. And we're going to get to that in a minute. Next.
You'll see the Grange in a minute.
Yep. So we're going to go on. So the next house is on Buckman Road. And Buckman Road was named for Homer's father, George Buckman, 9 acres, and we knew he had greenhouses. And there was 2 other family photos, and so if you want to show it, this is a photo, and I was able to prove that this was one of the photos with the house, the barn, and the outbuilding. At the same time, last year, we got donated the Rochester, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh Railroad book. In that book was a similar picture, not the same, but a similar one, and it said the Buchanan Farm, Barnard, New York. It was the Buckman Farm. Yeah. And so that identified it as a Buckman property, matched it perfectly. And this relative out in Greece, out in Michigan, who had never been to Greece before, gave me this wonderful family picture in front of the house of her grandmother, May, Uncle Burl, George and Lucy. Lucy's maiden name was Griffin, and young Homer Buckman. We never had any pictures of young Homer. Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. So from Michigan, so look further out. So look outside the box.
And just to mention that nobody from here had any pictures.
Nobody from here had pictures because Homer's daughter was single. And we don't know what she did with her scrapbooks. I know where some of her other things are, but not where her scrapbooks are.
This is Buckman Road that goes where
it's Upper Ridge.
Starbucks is off of Ridge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the interesting thing was I went out with my husband, and my great-grandparents and grandparents and my mother all lived on Buckman Road. We drove up and down the road, and the only house that was 2-story, matching it to a regular map, was the ugly brown house here.
Hey.
And I can say it's ugly because it was my family's house.
Well, it was mine.
Who said they lived there?
Who
I
lived
just
there?
heard somebody say,
Yeah, you live there now?
oh, Dad, you're kidding.
Both lived there.
Huh?
It was a double. It was grandfathered as a double. And my mother's sisters and their husbands and families lived in that house.
Wow, because they sold it in the 1950s, the house, but kept the land until 1993. But I was able to trace, and I was worried again, you weren't wishful thinking, we stayed in the Buckman's house, or we lived in it. So I did do a real estate search that Mr. Buckman sold it to Mr. Josh, who sold it to Edward and Maybeck Riley. But there was other properties that were sold in the area, so I risked my Kia Forte and drove down to the county office building. And those aren't online because it's after 1900, so you can't look at those, you got to go down in person. And sure enough, I got the abstract, and it was my family that lives there, and I need to contact.
Yeah, we got it.
We got to chat. So they lived there from 1912. My grandfather is James Ivan Riley. He was born in 1909. He's probably a 3 or 4-year-old on the farm at that point in time. And like the Buckman family, there's my family, my great-grandma, my aunt, my mother, and James is an older man, and Marie there. So taking a picture there at that house with them. Mom is 88, my Aunt Annie was 95, and they said it had always been a brown house. So I don't know when it had changed from white to brown and the windows changed. So that was kind of my fun surprise along the way. But you just have to look. Okay, you can go ahead. And then this is May. I just feel obliged to put her picture in because she's the one that preserved the pictures that we have today that I'm showing you that's going to be all in the book. And they had 4 daughters with Pliny. And then the third child of George was James Burrell Buckman, who married another pioneer family, Laura Clark. And there's him out in the field, as young J. Burrell. They lived out in Webster and had orchards. And he also had a fruit evaporator processing plant in Ovid near the station. And I think that's probably taken from there, but that's another great picture I have of the family from Bonnie. And then he was also the owner of Bon and Blessed and Buckman. So really fun things if you look outside the area. A lot of times I'm getting stuff from Michigan. You can go on. And there's young Homer and his wife.
Who was Emmeline Buckman in the Buckman dairy that was on the corner of...
That was Homer's daughter. So my last photo was of Homer's home. And we did not at the Historical Society or at the Town Historian's Office have a picture of it before. So this is the corner of Long Pond and Ridge, and on the right is the Grease Ridge Fire Department, the Buckman's Dairy, and then it looks like where that arrow is, it looks almost like an institutional building. But if you notice on the front that there's like a little porch there, and that's going to be important when we go looking further to match up my last house. So
And there's the picture of the Grange.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Grange is there.
Right
You'll see
there
it
at the
again.
corner.
And the Greece Baptist Church is opposite that.
Yeah.
Baptist Church.
So this other picture, if you go to the next one, looks almost like the Buckman Road farm. But if you look at it closely, you can see the steeple from the church behind, and you can also see the Grange across the road. So this looks like potentially Homer's house. Then she also sent me the picture of the house, and it's the long shape, again with the porch there. So what then I did was, the Mitchells were right there, and Jean Mitchell Otto is available, as well as her daughter Linda Costin, and I reached out to them and said, is this Homer's house? And they said yes. So I had additional proof. But again, it's all about proving things. You just can't make things up or, again, have wishful thinking. So this is kind of fun. And then if you go to the next one, there's young Homer. And that's a new picture for us. It's one that the Historical Society had. And there he is with his sleigh delivering milk in front of his house. So that's just fun stuff added in. And then it's the Buckman Dairy. His father actually bought it for him, and then he bought it from his father 2 years later through time. Okay, and we're going to go on. I'm going to do, let's see, okay. Anybody ever hear of the Glass family? I said, I like obscure. Yeah. And they owned, you can go to the next, actually we'll stay right there, I'm sorry. They owned the corner of Ridge and Dewey. A lot of the land there for Kodak. You'll see a map shortly. But there wasn't a picture to be had. There was not an agricultural picture from Dewey to Lake Avenue to be found. At Rochester Images, the Historian's Office, the Historical Society. Nothing. Heman was a lawyer. He founded Decatur, Nebraska with Stephen Decatur, and then came back here for unknown reasons. He went to law school south of here. And he also spoke at one of Susan B. Anthony's congresses, and he was the first president of the Grease Grange. Not a picture, nothing written, nothing, nowhere. So I went to find it. I researched him. I found a photo of him at Noted Men of Rochester in 1902 with a little bit of a bio. You want to go on? And then I was working with a family member who's not part of the Grease family, but he wrote a book and was an offshoot about a generation up from Heman's uncle. And this is the one I told you about, trying to get that Speedwell photo. So I found one on eBay. It was a commemorative stamp from Isle of Man, which is between England and an island between England and Ireland. And it was like the perfect picture, but there's copyright. So I emailed them, and they were very gracious, gave me permission, told me how they wanted me to contribute it. and then gave me a high-quality digital image. So I didn't have to pay that $150, and I got a nice image to use. And I didn't have to use the awful image I had from the eBay purchase I made. A fun fact is the Speedwell was supposed to travel with the Mayflower in 1620, but she kept springing leaks, like lots of leaks over months before the thing. And so this history is out, whether it was bad luck or whether it was crew sabotage because they didn't want to make the dangerous journey. So, but she came over with this group. So this is Ridge Road and Dewey Avenue. And I've been looking at this corner for years because Aunt Elizabeth Baker there and her husband Joseph are my family that came over in 1854. And I have not found, again, an agricultural picture. All I've found is commercial or industrial pictures. But Heman owned 55 acres behind my family. They owned across the street, and they owned that Kodak property. And I couldn't find anything other than agricultural censuses and him, in some of the newspapers. So you look for clues. You have to go outside the box. So there's a seed house there where that upper arrow is. And it got me thinking, is there an ad or a catalog? Guess what? I found an obscure repository called the Biodiversity Heritage Library. And Heman Glass was noted. I did discover through that farm was called the Lakeview Seed Farm. They had catalog pictures, but not only the pictures, they had the whole catalog digitized. And within the catalog, there were pictures. They're not good pictures, but Bill Sowers helped me optimize them as best as we can. And in the bottom picture, the man standing with the hat on, you can't see it real clearly, he's got a beard, it's Heman in the picture. So again, think outside the box. When you don't have sources, you don't have family pictures, there's ways to find them by using the history. Okay. The Justice family. This is where I go creeper again. I'll move. The Justice family arrived in 1838 and 1837, and they were on Ladder Road. They had 6 kids, and there were no street numbers. And they bought a house on Maiden Lane in 1844, right in the middle of the road on the south side. So I wanted to see if the house still existed, because I didn't have any pictures of Mr. Matthew Justice. So I parked my car, because I didn't have my husband with me that day, and I went up and down the road, up the road, actually I did pretty well, looking at foundations. And I came to this house and look at the foundation. It's fieldstone. And there was a couple sitting on the porch, and I introduced myself.
Ready to call the police.
And I said, I'm from the Historical Society looking for the Justice Homestead. And they looked at me and they said, you found it. They were able to tell me that to the left of the porch was likely the entrance to the original house. Underneath there was a dirt basement floor and actually full tree logs holding up the basement and framing the floor. And then they went in the house and even got better, and they brought out the abstract with the purchase by Matthew and his 2 sons, John and Henry, in 1844. So that was kind of fun. So it doesn't always work out that way. I haven't done as well with my family, but I'm doing pretty well in other people's families. So that was a fun one. Again, just looking outside the box. Okay. And then that is John and Henry, the first 2 that helped buy that house with their dad. And then there's their sister Avisa, and then Henry is an older man with their grandchildren. So I got those from the family, but that's who lived in that house. Okay. The Bonesteel family, I'm going to be quick. Most of you know that Jessie Bonestell was an actress. And I wanted to write a little bit about her, but I wanted to write something new and different. And so I wanted to discover new things. And so she was an actress, producer, director, mentor, theater owner. She was ahead of her time. And I went looking and Googled and a variety of other things, and I found that some woman in the 1980s, Lori Lee Triplett, had written a manuscript, a college thesis, about her. And I contacted the author, and she said, yeah, I did that. It's about 100 pages. but I can't tell you where it is because I typewrote it. I'm in academia, and I've written millions of them, and I don't know where my house it is. She said, the university library should have a copy, let me call them. So she called them, they said I could just call them and get it, and of course I called them and they said because I wasn't affiliated with the library, I wasn't going to get it. But I could do it through interlibrary loan, so I trekked down to the Fairport Library, filled out all the forms, then they declined the request. And the author was very gracious, and she contacted them and says, you said you were going to make this available for the future, that's why you wanted a copy. So she signed 1 million forms. The library did pull it out of storage and did digitize it. We have our copy, and they also put it on their library website, so it's available to anybody that's researching Jessie. But I was able to get something fun out of it. I got a lot of fun things. She had a lot, really, I used her bibliography a little bit, and she was getting a fair amount of money to do this. But anyway, there's this, according to family legend, and it was a first-person account when Jessie was interviewed by McCall's magazine in 1929. I don't have the magazine. I've got an eBay. Watch out for it. It's not one that's digitized, unfortunately. But before Jessie was born, her mother had her fortune told by a gypsy woman. Helen Louisa was approaching her 40th birthday and already had 10 kids. The gypsy told Helen Louisa that she had been living 2 lives, one as a wife and a mother, and in her dreams that of an actress. She predicted that she would have another child, which is not what she wanted to hear, because it was also well recorded that she didn't take well to life on the farm and read in her room a lot while everybody else managed the household. And this child would not only be ambitious and special, but would fulfill her dream of becoming an actress. And that was the story that Jessie told McCall's magazine. They were spiritualists, or at least her mother was. Jessie's first talks were in spiritualist churches when she was 2 and 3. And I did find out from a descendant family member she did believe in the occult. It's also believed that she haunts her old theater in Michigan. So you pick up some different things. So I like unusual stuff. And then the last thing I have is the Warboys family. I was stalking again, and there's a horse farm, you can go to it, at Manitou Hills Farm, on the kind of upper end of Manitou Road. And I went out to take, there was no old pictures, so I went out to take current pictures. And when I was there, the owner came out, and it was Janie. My sister was in 4-H with her, and I was in 4-H horses with her sister Joanne, so I introduced myself, so at least I knew who these people were. And we got to chatting, and she went in the house and said, I have something for you. And she took that picture off the wall and let me take a picture of it. So I now have my then and now picture of the house. The other interesting thing is we're doing the Frisbee family, and they have a picture of their old house exactly like it. They donated it to the Historical Society. It's on the wall of the Historical Society. So someone must have come through doing rendering at some point in time of houses.
Same frame and everything.
Yeah, same frame, everything. And actually it's a yellow house also. But so that was my fun visit with an old friend. Her father used to take our horses to camp. He had a 10-horse trailer. So, but anyway, and then I got some stories. So it goes back to Marie as we wind down.
Oh, you're going to get me with challenges now. We started doing email. We would visit people in their homes. We talked to them over the phone, over the internet, exchanging I don't know how many letters and tons of emails back and forth. And you couldn't erase anything. You know how you read an email and you get rid of it? Well, we can't do that with any of our families because there were some from Volume 1 that we're now using in Volume 2. So we've got quite the email backup on both of our computers. And the fact that we had a background in genealogy didn't hurt, but some of the people that we were dealing with, some of our contributors said, where's the proof? So we'd have, for every little thing that we would write, and I talk about it at the end, we had to prove everything to the people who were contributing to us. So it took a while. Also, there was conflicting information we would get from the family versus what was written and what we found in different records that we had found. Either that or, better yet, they had no information at all. So we were giving them their genealogy, because they had done none of it for themselves. And we got no pictures at all from some of the families, so we had to get very creative in how we got our pictures. So in finishing up, for doing the family review, amounts to, once we write the stories, we send them to the contributors for them to check our accuracy, to make sure the names are right, the dates are right, and everything like that. And we expect them to get the information back to us as soon as possible. Still waiting for, I think I sent it out in August, and I'm still waiting for the response, despite sending emails every week saying, I really need your answer to this.
I have all
So,
mine.
we've also had to throw out some of the families that we were doing, that we had done the research on, because they never signed the release forms. So, I mean, my deadline was July 1st, and I am still waiting for permission on 2 of the families. So 2 of them may not appear in the final thing because I have no permission. If you don't have permission, you throw them out. That's why you haven't seen a lot of, despite Bill bugging both of us for, can I get a list of all the people? I go, yeah, not really, because we don't know who's going to be in the book and who's not. And in fact, as we sit here today, we don't know who's, Joanne's done, but I've still got permissions that I have to get for my families. So mine may change. But here's an example. Joanne sends out the primary story or the preliminary draft to the family members, and you tell them, who you are and what we're doing, and yeah. So the other thing too is that we have to make sure that they clarify everything for us and make sure that we get the permission from them. So when we do the final touches, once we get the story back, we've actually written the story, we're happy with it, then we send it to Maureen Whalen, and she does, the wordsmithing on all of it and does the editing. You gotta have a professional librarian do your editing for you, because neither one of us are really writers. So then I take the photographs, and anything that Joanne gets in, she'll either send it to Bill, or then I do the final optimization. And then the ones that we're going to save for the Historical Society, we want to save them in the highest quality possible. So it's going to be probably a TIFF. But if we put TIFFs in the book, I'd never be able to open the file or send it to anybody. So I have to sit there and downsize all the pictures to maybe 2x3 or 3x4 from whatever the original size is. But what we're going to give the Historical Society is the full rendering, no straightening, the way it is in the album. I mean, even if it's askew, that's how it's going to be recorded in the Society. In order to make it pleasant for people like you to read a book, you want to be able to read it. You want to be able to see the people that are in there, and you have to optimize them. So it's not necessarily the original photograph that we're going to do in the book. Then we send it to Amazon, and we self-publish. So there's 2 ways to buy it. We want to make sure that people that live out of state, all these people in Michigan, I've got a family, one's in Idaho, one's in California, a couple of, there's 5 or 6 of them in Michigan. And we want to make sure that they're not going to be able to come to the Historical Society to buy their copy. So they buy it on Amazon, and they get the free shipping if they have Prime.
It also has international, so we had several people in Europe buy it, including my daughter. So you can buy it through Amazon, Netherlands, or wherever.
Yeah, so that winds up being good. But actually, the Historical Society, when it comes time to buying Volume 2, please buy it from the Historical Society, because they make more money that way. Amazon doesn't get their cut. So, but you didn't hear that from me. So also, as I mentioned before, that we don't make any money by doing the book. All the proceeds. Oh, now what happened? Oh, okay. All right. Did I miss another one? No? Okay. That's the second time they did that. Okay. So in terms of finishing up, we want to give you a couple of research suggestions. Think outside the box. If you get a chance, look at all the digital images that are out there now. Visit the historical societies, museums, libraries, cemeteries, any place that these relatives might have lived. And you want to collaborate with all the family branches if you're putting together something, on this scale that we're doing. We also want to look for relatives that moved out west. In fact, most of my people have moved out west. Very few of my people have relatives that live in the area. So it's even harder for me because or in the case of the Buckmans, nobody here has any pictures. So you're going outside to look for the pictures that you're going to use in the book. And then we also contact local history books and the societies. As I said, I don't know how many places. I dealt with a couple of historical societies in England that got me the original, like a marriage certificate. They went to the church, got me the marriage certificate, and sent it to me. So one society I had to join in order for them to get me a picture, but that was all right. It was money well spent. So in terms of advice for those of you who want to, take a chance on doing your own family's genealogy, hopefully that comes in retirement like it did with me. I did a little dabbling, but once you retire, then you have more time to do this. You have to talk to your family members that are still around. How many times have you said, oh, I wish I would have asked my mother this. I wish I would have asked my aunt that. So, now's the time to do it when they're still alive. Also, write things down as you hear it from them, because sometimes you may hear, there's always a grain of truth in every story. And you have to make sure that you be able to differentiate between the two. And share. If there's other family members, talk to the other family members, and maybe, they don't want to talk to each other, but maybe you can be the person to contact both of them and play mediator and get the information that you need. Also, use your local resources and look outside of the mainline, the people that married into. Like I said, finding people that, one of the families that I'm doing is a Clark family, and they never paid attention to the in-law. The in-law was Wood. Well, Wood goes all the way back to the Mayflower too. And that's where I found a lot of information. In Rhode Island is on the minister that was out there. They don't know where he's buried, but there's a 60-foot monument that's dedicated to him in Rhode Island. So I had to get permission from the Rhode Island Historical Society to get a copy, proof who I was, what I was doing. Here's a copy of our original book, blah, blah, blah. We're not making any money doing this. It all goes to the society. I got the man's Bible when he brought it with him from England. And he started the Second Baptist Church in Rhode Island, and the guy who started the First Baptist Church was Roger Williams. So, you never can tell what kind of find you're going to get by doing this kind of research. Also, follow the family that left the area. Google, no matter what. Google books, Google search, everything. Google, you can find a lot more stuff. I've gone back 2 years later and found more stuff than I had done when I had done the original research. Also, there's many free genealogy resources. You can go to the library, you can get on Ancestry, and most of all, you want to make it fun. When you're doing the exploration, you got to have a curiosity to want to do it and preserve it for other people. Maybe your kids are going to, get the backhoe out when you die and take all this stuff. So make sure you donate it to your local historical society. Or how many times, you want to say people are going to get rid of it, and find somebody who's really going to want it, because all of these people are thrilled to death that we're putting their family albums to good use. Even if it's only one picture and one book for the society, they're very happy to share with us. So volume 2 will be out in January or February, depending on how fast Amazon wants to do it this time. Last time we ran into a little trouble because we were too close to Christmas. So that's why we decided to make sure we're going to wait till after Christmas so that there's no argument there. And thank you very much. If there are any questions, we'll be happy to answer them for you.
We do have the room reserved till 8:30, but as long as does anybody have any questions? I'd like to bring the microphone to you, though, so we can. Oh, we got one way in.
Thanks. Hi, I was just wondering, you kept mentioning that families had gone a lot to Michigan. And I have found that also in several branches of my genealogical lines that they either had gone to Michigan from here or came back from Michigan in the Kenyans, for instance. And do we know why Michigan? What was the big draw?
Well, this canal was built in 1829. So once the wall was canal, a lot of people went there, and
There were land grants after the Civil War, so a lot of people that lived in the town of Greece got land grants after they served in the war. So a lot of them moved out there, and land was cheap in Michigan. It was really good, and there was also it was at Grand Rapids. Who's the furniture place? All I can think of is Kalamazoo. It's not Grand Rapids. It's the furniture place.
Land was cheap. The other thing is chain migration. They would take the canal down to Lake Erie and then across and then go by land. And it was cheap. And then once families or old neighbors got there, they would say, this is awesome, this is wonderful. And they would form sometimes a little bit of their own community. But Michigan was a very common place.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
geologically, Michigan was very similar to the South Shore of Lake Ontario. So you have all these fruit farms that, so that people were, and if you follow the cobblestone houses along whatever you find them out in Michigan, and notice, of course, that there's a Monroe, Michigan, and a Rochester, Michigan, and a lot of the Wayne County, Michigan, lots of other things. So a lot of people went out that way, and the climate was similar. The stuff that they were growing here was very similar, so that it was easy.
Actually, Bill, as you know, the Rose had a garden center, essentially what today would be a nursery. And they actually set up the Lay brothers, and it was, they went out to Michigan. And the Lays were here in Greece in 1808. Lots of kids, so the older two brothers went out west to Michigan and set up there. And they brought, I think it was like 3,000 plants and bushes and trees out there. And they were the first greenhouse out there. And in finding through paperwork, both in the Rowe side and the Lay side, it was from the Rowe Nursery that went out there. So speaking about similar horticulture. So again, finding relationships. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody? Oh, one more. Okay.
I was a little confused about your definition of descendant. When you talked about Erastus Hickok, you talked about, first of all, not having any local people, and then you talked about Berger being a descendant. So there are a lot of descendants in this area from Erastus Hickok.
Well, yes.
Right, but not with the name. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
Exactly. And Lorena went to Michigan, so all of his kids wound up in Michigan except for Lucy.
Right.
She stayed here and married the Hinchers.
Right,
So
okay, thank you.
they got the name Hinchers,
Right,
not Hickox. There's no Hickox.
thank you.
All right, this is our last program lecture for 2023. If you follow our newsletter, our emails, our Facebook, we'll be back in January. We know we'll definitely be here in January. There's some renovations going on at the public library that's why we can't be there. So we'll see what the spring comes. Oop, wait a minute.
My girlfriend has a picture of her family.
Well, this is my grandparents. This is probably taken around 1916, and Pauline and I were trying to figure out what house that is. It's still...
It doesn't look like a Grease house, but that's the experts over here.
I think it probably was. They were related to the Matsons, too. I know where they live.
Actually, it's parallel to the Elm Gardens.
Oh.
AYER. It's parallel to Elm Gardens over in the Florida Vista area.
Oh, okay.
As you leave there, don't forget, Rick's got some free gloves. You might need them tonight. It's supposed to go down below freezing. Thank everyone for coming. Have a good holidays, and hope to see you next year.
Upcoming second Tuesdays of the month programs from the Greece Historical Society. We will be returning in January, starting on January 9th at 7 p.m. It will be Indigenous Peoples' Rights in Western New York. Coming in February 13th at 7 p.m. will be the history of WDKX. Times, dates, and locations for the following programs are subject to change. Please check our Facebook page for updated information. Want to learn more from the Greece Historical Society and Museum? Then click that subscribe button. Hit that bell icon to get notified when there's new content coming from the Greece Historical Society. You can visit us on the web at GreeceHistoricalSociety.org. You can find us on Facebook at Greece Historical Society. And you can stop in at the Greece Historical Society at 595 Long Pond Road.